And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, if any man has a discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. This shall be the nature of his uncleanness due to his discharge, if his flesh runs with his discharge, or if his flesh is plugged up by his discharge, that is his uncleanness. Any bedding upon which the man with the discharge will lie shall become unclean. Any object upon which he will sit shall become unclean. And a man who touches his bedding shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. Anyone who sits on an object upon which the man with the discharge will sit shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. Anyone who touches the flesh of the man with the discharge shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water. He shall remain unclean until evening. And if the man with the discharge spits upon a clean person, that person shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. Any riding gear upon which the man with the discharge will ride becomes unclean. Whoever touches anything that will be under him becomes unclean until evening. Whoever lifts them up shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. Whoever the man with the discharge touches without the latter, having rinsed his hands, shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in the waters, and he shall remain unclean until evening. And an earthenware vessel which the man with the discharge will touch shall be broken. Any wooden vessel shall be rinsed in water. When the man with the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, he shall count 7 days for himself for his purification, and then immerse his garments and immerse his flesh in spring water, and he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and give them to the Cohen. And the Cohen shall make them one into a sin offering and one into a burnt offering, and the Cohen shall effect atonement for him from his discharge before the Lord. A man from whom there is a discharge of semen shall immerse all his flesh in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. Any garment or any leather object which has semen on it shall be immersed in water, and shall remain unclean until evening. A woman with whom a man cohabits, whereby there was a discharge of semen, they shall immerse in water, and they shall remain unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge of flesh discharging blood, she shall remain in her state of menstrual separation for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall become unclean until evening. Whatever she lies on during her menstrual separation shall become unclean, and whatever she sits on shall become unclean. Anyone who touches her bedding shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. And anyone who touches any object upon which she will sit shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. And if he is on the bedding or on the object upon which she is sitting, when he touches it, he becomes unclean until evening. If a man cohabits with her, the uncleanness of her menstruation shall be upon him. He shall be unclean for 7 days, and any bedding he lies upon shall become unclean. And a woman whose flow of blood flows for many days outside of the time of her menstrual separation, or she has a discharge after her menstrual separation, then all the days she has her unclean discharge, she shall be unclean, just like the days of her menstrual separation. Any bedding upon which she lies during all the time of her discharge will have the same uncleanness for her as the bedding of her menstruation, and any object upon which she will sit shall become unclean like her menstrual uncleanness. Anyone who touches them shall become unclean. He shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in water, and he shall remain unclean until evening. And if she becomes clean of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after this she may be cleansed. And on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves and 2 young doves, and bring them to the Cohen to the entrance of the tent of meeting. The Cohen shall make one into a sin offering and one into a burnt offering, and the Cohen shall effect atonement for her before the Lord from the uncleanness of her discharge. You shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, so that they will not die on account of their uncleanness if they defile my sanctuary, which is in their midst. This is the law for one who has a discharge and one from whom semen issues, through which he becomes unclean. For a woman who has her menstrual flow, and for one who has a discharge, whether male or female, and a man cohabits with an unclean woman.